Hello, beautiful people, and welcome back for your new moon in Cancer transit update reading. The new moon stations exact on July 14th at 5:44 a.m. Eastern Time at 21 degrees and 59 minutes in Cancer. And this is significant mostly because it's in that very last minute where it stations exact just before the 22nd degree, which is considered the kill or be killed degree in degree theory. Now, another prominent yet subtle player in this new moon that's happening is Psyche. We've also had a lot of Psyche energy just since the beginning of Cancer season as well, or even since Gemini season, when Mercury and Psyche were directly on top of each other within 2 minutes during the Gemini new moon. So the start of that new moon cycle for the Gemini new moon through the Capricorn full moon, all the way leading up to the Cancer new moon, which we are talking about now, Psyche and Mercury were playing a distinct role throughout that cycle. And now Psyche is going to be at 29 degrees and 51 minutes in Cancer. So while the sun and the moon are at the very last degree of the 21st degree, Psyche is going to be, or sorry, the very last minute of the 21st degree, Psyche is going to be in the last minutes of Cancer in general, just after Jupiter had just passed through the last minutes of Cancer during the Capricorn full moon. So again, very prominent energy that Psyche is playing, but in the back. She's like, if you think of the world as a stage, right? We're at the theater, right? Psyche is the tech crew. The show can't go on without the tech crew. There is no show without the tech crew, but nobody sees the tech crew. But the show would not happen without the tech crew. That's kind of the energy that Psyche is moving with, not only from the last new moon cycle, but beginning with this Cancer new moon cycle as well. So we will talk more about Psyche as we continue along. And as always, of course, if you see me glance to the side, you know the drill. I got my notes over here and the chart in general just so I can see what's what. So because you know I love these quintile aspects, we have 5 quintiles during this new moon transit. We have the sun and the moon quintiling Persephone with a 1-degree orb. Saturn will quintile Pluto with a 2-degree orb. Uranus will biquintile Phallus, who we've been talking about a little bit, with a 1-degree orb. And Eris, this is the closest one, at the exact time of the new moon, will quintile the ascendant, which will be on the horizon, which, funny enough, is Cancer. So in terms of the transits and the rising signs of the exact moment that the new moon is happening, that's more just for people who are ritualistic and like to be precise with their rituals, with their magic, with their practice, and align it with the Gregorian calendar and the time of the system that we exist in, since, the only way we can defeat the system is within it, right? So I always like to establish that understanding of Cancer will be on the eastern horizon, Capricorn will be on the western horizon. Oh, interesting. So we'll have Cancer and Capricorn on the horizons, but rather than the cardinals, Libra and Aries being at the roots and the midheaven, it'll be Virgo at the root and Pisces at the midheaven, the lowest point in the sky and the highest point in the sky. So that in itself gives a little bit of a different dynamic, but again, this is really only for the people who like to work their practices precisely down to the minute, etc. But with the cardinals being on the horizon and the mutables being on the lowest and the highest point, it gives a little bit more malleability in terms of intention, in terms of the way that these intentions are then delivered into your life. It gives it more flexibility. Not necessarily saying that the cardinal signs are rigid, but they can be very hard-headed in their pursuit, right? Because they see their destination. They don't know how they're going to get there. They just know if they go, they're going to get there. So they're just going, and it's kind of their way or the highway because they know the route they need to take. The advice doesn't really help cardinal signs. They know the route they need to take in order to get there. But with it being mutables on the lowest and the highest point in the sky, and especially with Pisces being the highest point and Virgo being at our roots, while Persephone is making a quintile aspect to the sun and the moon, and Persephone is related to Virgo. Persephone is the virgin. Persephone is the innocent maiden who then, again, I always say, for better or for worse, is then granted her seat of power as the queen of the underworld, right? And also still, a goddess of harvest and all of that with her mother Demeter. But regardless, Cancer being on the eastern horizon puts the sun and the moon, which is also conjoining Mercury. Again, the sun and the moon are at 21 degrees and 59 minutes in Cancer. Mercury is at 19 degrees and 51 minutes. There we go. And then Psyche is exactly 10 degrees away from Mercury at 29 degrees and 51 minutes in Cancer. All of that will be in the first house of the collective chart for the exact moment of the new moon. Jupiter will be at 3 degrees Leo, just in that second house, and then et cetera, et cetera. We'll have Venus in Virgo. We'll have Eros in Libra, Lilith still in Sagittarius, Pallas still in Capricorn, Pluto in Aquarius, North Node. And the nodes are at 0 degrees Pisces and Virgo as well, which is significant here. Neptune, Saturn, Pallas, Vesta, and Eris all still in Aries. We'll have Chiron at 0 degrees Taurus, Persephone at 10 degrees Taurus, and then, of course, Uranus and Mars and Ceres, aka Demeter, in Gemini. So, a lot of energy, a lot of movement, and again, the quintile aspects, I like to talk about them because they have been significant in my own chart, in my own life, as I have come to understand who I am as a person. The quintiles gives us the glimpse, it gives us the conscious awareness to help recognize the innate gifts that are within us, so that awareness can then lead to the actualization and the utilization of those gifts, both for ourselves and for the world and for the collective, because we harness these gifts in order to give them back to the world. There's a reason they're innate within us. There's a reason they're a gift, because life outside of the system, the life we walk, the trek we walk, it's supposed to be easy. We're supposed to follow those gifts. If every single person in the world was honing in on those gifts and following those gifts, the world would look a lot different than it does now, because the system would not be in place. There'd be a lot more empathy, there'd be a lot more community, there'd be a lot more connection. So that's why I like to talk about the quintiles, because the more people are aware of them, the more they can start becoming aware of their gifts and the gifts of awareness that we are moving through as a collective, which is more in terms of what the quintiles represent for these transits. So again, the sun and the moon, our outward expression, our self understanding, our awareness of self, our perception of self, that's the sun. The moon, our internal awareness. So the sun is like the external awareness, how we shine brightly out in the world. The moon is that darker side of ourselves, those internal awarenesses, the emotional side of ourselves, the feelings, the body in its own capacity. It's the body because it's the senses in that understanding. There's a reason that the moon is exalted in Taurus, which is a sign of sensuality. There's a reason, because the moon also connects us deeply to our body. But first, we have to sort through the puzzle pieces of the emotions in order to access that connection to body as deeply as the moon would like us to. Both of those two quintiling Persephone, again, the goddess that rules the underworld and, the harvest in the springtime, etc. The goddess, I think she is considered the goddess of the springtime. Maybe don't quote me on that, but I think that's her the 6 months she's up here, she's the goddess of springtime. 6 months she's down below, she's the goddess, the queen of the underworld. Those two coming together, while the nodes, the north node is in Pisces and the south node is in Virgo at 0 degrees, while Venus, part of that aspect of the quote lighter divine feminine, just to make it different than the dark feminine that we talk about with Lilith, but Venus is also in Virgo, conjoining the south node technically, because the south node's at 0 degrees, Venus is at 5 degrees. So there's, again, a lot of the energy of this new moon is very subtle. And as a reminder, the moon is the ruler of Cancer. So it's energy that feels natural. And when we awaken these gifts within us, again, going back to the idea that these gifts and the expression of these gifts, once you become aware of it, it's easy in the fact that, like, it's not necessarily not hard work, but it's work that doesn't feel like work because it's natural. So it's not like you are not going the distance. It's not that you are like being lazy about it. It's that you're putting in that work, but putting in the work feels like it's what you're supposed to do, which makes it feel natural, which makes it feel easy. It's just an expression. That's the energy here. And that's kind of the energy of this full moon. It's recognizing how easy things are supposed to be, but not without trial, right? Because we can't, going back to what I said in the Capricorn full moon video, the point where everything's burning down, and then the point where after we have already planted the new seeds and rebirth and things start to grow, there's a whole middle section in between there. There's a whole middle section of mystery and mystique and work. And that's kind of where this Cancer new moon energy is taking place. So the Capricorn full moon was that check-in point that says, I have a choice, and this choice is going to drastically alter the trajectory of my life moving forward for better or for worse, because ultimately it's the choice. What do you want to do? Do you want to continue in the monotonous drone, the monotonous buzzing, or do you want to follow that curiosity towards these awakened gifts. And eventually, the life that feels like it's easy, the life that it feels like it's worth living. That was the choice the Capricorn full moon represented. Now, with this Cancer new moon, you made the choice, and either you stayed where you were, and, this isn't really relevant. I don't think you'd be watching this video if, you chose the former. But regardless, you chose to make those small steps towards that awakening, that understanding, that self actualization, right? So the Cancer new moon represents okay, the fire has burnt down. Maybe it's still actively burning down, but like, that's crazy. As soon, was that in my front yard? That's genuinely crazy. As I'm talking about the fire burning down, my neighbors start doing firecrackers. You can't make this shit up. I hope you heard that on there. That's crazy. Anyway, either the fire has already burnt itself out, or, the fire is still going, but like your immediate vicinity has gone through the trials and the tribulations and the most drastic effects that you will feel. So maybe the fire has continued to roll on, but like your sphere is out of the worst of it, right? That's what this new moon represents. It's like you're looking around at all the damage, all the crackling that might still be happening around you, or the peak is over, the heights of the destruction is over, I'll say. Because destruction is not always bad. I always like to say, when I'm talking about like bringing things into creation and allowing things to form on their own, I always like to say that may creation bring elation and may destruction be in the highest elevation. Because truly, the only way we can move towards creation is if we allow the things that are blocking that creation, or just allow things that are taking up too much space to allow for new creation. That must be destroyed, that must be burnt down. And that's kind of what the choice point and the fires, the metaphorical fires, are representing from that Capricorn full moon into this Cancer new moon. Everything has either begun to be destroyed or has burnt itself down. And now we're in that weird middle part where it's going to be a lot of work to retill the soil. It's going to be a lot of work to create the space beyond the ash, to, make the playing field level again so you can replant those seeds. So you can bring about that growth. But again, it's work to get to the point that you even can plant the seeds. And that's what this new moon in Cancer is representing. You're finally shifting that awareness from the monotonous work that you've been doing and feeling like life is hard and that's all that there is. You're shifting it from that monotonous work and moving it towards work that feels effortless. But it's going to take getting your hands dirty, actually doing manual labor, or in terms of your mental creation, mental labor, doing some form of labor that is a bit strenuous. But it's because putting in the hard work now to re-level that field is going to give you the opportunity to then plant the seeds that allow that to grow. And that's why, going back to Psyche, her being in the last minutes of Cancer, again, just about a week and a half after Jupiter was in those same last minutes, or I guess about 2 weeks, because it was during the Capricorn full moon that Jupiter was in the last minutes. But regardless, Psyche then taking Jupiter's spot in those last minutes of Cancer, while the Sun and the Moon are in Cancer, conjoining Mercury in Cancer. And remember, for the Gemini new moon, Psyche and Mercury were directly on top of each other within 2 minutes, not 2 degrees, 2 minutes of one another. Psyche's been playing a very quiet but prominent role throughout these moon cycles, and she continues to do so. Now, as a reminder, if we go back to the mythology, Psyche is Eros's star-crossed lover, right? But the story is kind of heartbreaking before it ends up being the happy ending that it is. Psyche's a mortal woman. She's the most gorgeous woman in the world, so much so that people stopped worshiping Aphrodite at the temples and started bringing their offerings for Aphrodite to Psyche, started making offerings to Psyche, a mortal woman. Now, Aphrodite didn't like this, so she sends her son, Eros, akin to Cupid, she sends her son to go hit, not Eros, not Aphrodite, hit Psyche with the arrow of love while she's staring at a pig, a gross, ugly, disgusting pig, so that Psyche then falls in love with the pig and becomes the laughingstock of the whole town. The issue there is that Psyche is the most gorgeous woman in the world, the most beautiful woman in the world. So Eros falls in love with her immediately. No arrow needed. He said, I am in love with this woman. Starts having a secret affair with her under the darkness. Because he's like, she cannot see that I am Eros, son of Aphrodite. Psyche cannot know this. But eventually, Psyche's curiosity gets to her, and she tries to look at him under candlelight while they're sleeping one night. But the hot wax spills onto Eros, and as that happens, I think Psyche trips over Eros's arrows, spills the hot wax on him, also gets pierced with one of Eros's arrows. So as she's getting pierced with Eros's arrows, she's spilling the hot wax on Eros. She's seeing Eros. She's like, oh my God, I'm in love with this man because she got pierced by the arrow. Eros was already in love with her, but she essentially betrayed his trust by gazing at his face, which she asked her, made her promise she wouldn't do, and he flees in the night. He's like, you'll never see me again. Bye. I'm out. Psyche is distraught because she loves this man, not only because of the arrow, but because the time they shared together was so unique and connective and beautiful. She's in love with this man. And she's searching high and low for him. She is distraught. She's not eating. She's not sleeping. She's just searching for him. And none of the goddesses would help her because they knew of Aphrodite's initial plan. And they didn't want to go against Aphrodite because not only is Aphrodite the goddess of beauty, she's also the goddess of war. She can be vindictive and vicious, right? So they were like, we want none of this. We don't want to help. Good luck. Good luck. And eventually Psyche goes to Aphrodite. And she says, Aphrodite, Aphrodite, I love your son. I need to find him. I know I'm a mortal woman, but I'm in love with him, blah, blah, blah. And he's in love with me, blah, 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 blah. And Aphrodite sends Psyche on a bunch of quests. I forget what she calls them in the myth, but they're basically akin to the labors that Hera sends Heracles on, intending for her to die, intending for these labors or these quests. Again, I don't know what she calls them, but intending for these quests to either be impossible or eventually to kill her. On the third quest, she sends her to the underworld. No mortal woman or deity, except for Hermes, except for Mercury. No mortal person or deity is usually able to get to the underworld, obviously, other than Persephone, because she rules there, other than Hades, because he rules there. And then Mercury is the psychopomp. Those are the only three deities and mortal people that should be able to get to the underworld without dying. Aphrodite intended for Psyche to die after all of these other labors that she already put this girl through. Seemingly impossible feats that Psyche, because she was so focused on her love, was able to get through. With the help of nature, too. She didn't do it alone. Mother Nature, all of the animals, she got help. Unexpected help from unexpected places, but it was still grueling work. She ends up getting to the underworld and coming back. Finds her love. Long story short. I didn't mean to go through the whole myth. Long story short, Aphrodite's like, all right, fine, but you're still mortal, you can't be with my son. Zeus grants her immortality, so Aphrodite pretty much has to like kick rocks and say, fine, you can be with him. Happily ever after, they have a baby, etc. But again, that middle part between falling in love and losing the love and getting the love back, it's work. It's strenuous. But at the same time, it shows Psyche exactly what she's capable of, exactly the strength of her spirit, exactly what she can do when she puts her full force and will towards something. It shows her just how indomitable her spirit is. Even though a powerful goddess is trying to go against her, the spirit of a mortal woman was enough to get her immortality and be the love of her life and a happily ever after. So again, that's kind of the role Psyche is playing with this new moon. It's emphasizing, this idea that you have, this vision that you have that we've been talking about for the last couple of videos, this vision of the future that you have. Yeah, we see everything burning down around you, but you have this vision, which means that vision is possible, which means the excuse me, the circumstances that need to be met collectively and globally to make the environment ripe enough to allow that vision to blossom are also possible. But going back to the role Phallus was playing in the last moon cycle, and in this one too, during the Capricorn full moon and in the Cancer new moon, we'll get to that in a second, it's about the small decisions you make every single day, which end up changing the trajectory of your outcome. So I'll ask you, if you made that decision to walk away from the droning monotony, to walk away from the buzz, you made that decision to walk away from the buzzing noise and actually follow the pursuit of your purpose, what you feel your purpose is, great, you made that decision. But you also need to understand that this vision is not just going to be handed to you. The decision comes with small choices every single day that you make. Now, going back to Phallus. Phallus is making as precisely exact as it can get. A 0-degree and 8-minute orb for this aspect. They're in conjunct. Mars. Mars is at 11 degrees, exactly 11 degrees, 0 minutes in Gemini, and Phallus is at 11 degrees and 8 minutes in Capricorn. In conjunct aspects, we talked a little about them on here too. Inconjunct aspects can't necessarily communicate or work directly with one another, but they're saying a lot to each other indirectly. They're making side eyes, they're side glancing at one another. It's almost secretive. But at the same time, just like quintiles, with quintiles, you can't do anything about the gifts you have that are innately within you until you're aware of those gifts. This aspect between Mars, our planet of action and drive and passion and willpower, and also war, but that's kind of in this example, it's not really relevant, but nah, it's not relevant though. Anyway, whatever, you get it. Mars is all of those things, making a near exact um, quincunx aspect, inconjunct aspect to Phallus, who is the asteroid that tells us one small decision can alter the trajectory of your life and the lives of others drastically at the drop of a hat. The fact that our planet of action cannot directly communicate or directly work with this asteroid that tells us our actions, Mars is the planet of action, our actions have direct consequences. And again, consequences aren't always bad. Our actions have direct consequences that will then adjust the trajectory of our lives moving forward. They can't see each other. They can't work together. So the planet of action cannot work with the asteroid that tells us that our actions have consequences, but they're working indirectly. So again, it goes back to that idea that if you aren't aware of this aspect during this new moon, you won't be as mindful of the actions and the steps you're taking. You won't be as diligent in terms of the details of what actions you're putting towards and the way you're going. So this is why astrology can be really helpful sometimes, because sometimes the awareness is all you need. That on that day, on the 14th, you're going to say like, oh, maybe you're feeling really lazy and don't feel like doing anything, but you set a very stringent schedule of like, today I need to do this, today I need to do that, today I need to do this, so that in 5 years I'm there, right? And that's not to say don't take a break, but it's like, if you're being lazy just because you feel like being lazy rather than resting because you know you need to rest, and you know there's a difference between the two. I'm not even going to explain that further. You know there's a difference between the two. On the 14th, on the new moon, if you're being lazy just to be lazy, if you're not aware of this aspect between Mars and Phallus, you might give yourself the excuse that I deserve a rest day. Even though in your gut, in your soul, in your psyche, you know today is not the day for rest. You know today is not the day for rest. That's going to set you back on that trajectory. That day of rest could have been the day that you decided, you know what, I'm going to go to the gym, and I'm going to work out for 3 hours, that you meet a personal trainer who's looking for people to hire at his new gym in Hawaii. And he can also offer you accommodations for free. And why did I just say he? Mindfulness, awareness. She's a personal trainer. She's buff as fuck, thick ass thighs, but in terms of like muscle, you know. Anyway, you get the point. Equality here, feminism. She's offering that day you would have gone to the gym, but you decided not to because you're lazy. You could have met somebody that could change your life. You could have been driving down the highway and it's 3 in the morning, just a couple hours before the new moon. You're driving down the highway just because you couldn't sleep and wanted to go take a ride and turn the music up. You end up passing a car that's about to be like on fire on the side of the road. You help them out, and then you end up saving their life, essentially. These little things that we don't think twice about, but we do it because we feel like in our soul and our psyche, we feel like we're meant to do it. It's because we're meant to do it. So on the day of the new moon, if you're feeling like you want to be lazy just to be lazy, rather than taking a rest day because you deserve a rest day, there's a difference. There's a difference. Don't overthink it. If that day is meant for rest, then let it be for rest. But if you're just feeling lazy, get the fuck up. Because that's that Mars Phallus inconjunct quincunx aspect. They can't necessarily work together, but there's a lot being said behind the scenes. But if you're ignoring the side glances, if you're purposely looking away from that direction because you just don't feel like looking that way to get the messages that aren't being directly spoken, you're going to miss out. You're going to miss out. That's not to say it'll set you all the way off of your path and you're doomed forever, but you could miss out on something that was really, really meant for you because you were being too lazy to take the action. I've barely looked at my notes here, but going back to the sun and the moon, the sun and moon are, other than conjoining Mercury and technically conjoining Psyche as well, because that's within 10 degrees, should also directly square Vesta, with a 5 minute orb. Vesta's going to be at 21 degrees and 55 minutes. And remember, the sun and the moon are at 21 degrees and 59 minutes in Cancer. Vesta is in Aries, directly squaring one another. And then Vesta is also conjoining Pallas. So Pallas is technically also in that square. It's just a little bit of a wider orb there. Vesta, we talked about Vesta and Pallas a lot during the Cancer season reading. Vesta is the goddess of the hearth. She is the sacred flame within us. She is the devotional spirit within us. Every single since the ancient times, since Roman times, every single sacrifice that was ever made goes to Vesta first because she is the flame. She's the flame that once we get that flame stoked and it's actually it's tangible, it's producing heat, you never let that flame die out. You never let that flame die out. It's the devotional spirit we show ourselves and to our spiritual practices and to our lives in general. Squares are tense aspects. They're tense because it's like they both want to go in different directions, but they're kind of being forced to work together like a rubber band almost, you know? Like they're being forced to work together, and because they're being forced to work together, it's a grounding aspect. They want to go this way, but they're being forced to ground, which means that the sun and the moon, again, our outward expression, our internal emotion, squaring, having that tense and grounding aspect with the devotional flame within us, while the North Node is at 0 degrees Pisces, this is giving you the opportunity to ground into who you need to be, both externally and internally, in order to not only stoke that flame, but to maintain. Not only to stoke the flame, but to maintain and take it far. Take it really far. Going along with that, going back to the quincunx aspect that we talked about with Phallus and Mars, except this time it's the sun and the moon, quincunx Lilith, our dark feminine. Well, she's actually dark. She's not air quote dark. I air quote light feminine with Venus because it's just to get that dichotomy. But Lilith is the dark feminine aspect, the repressed aspect. She's the side of ourselves that society tells us, nope, that's wrong. She's the one that decided to leave the Garden of Eden when what's his name? I love that I forget his name. The guy, Adam, said, who is he? Why would there a man? Why would there be a man there? She's the one that decided to leave the Garden of Eden when Adam refused to switch top and bottom every once in a while. She's like, missionary's boring. I want to fuck in other positions. Let me get on top a little bit. Let me ride that dick. That's all she wanted to do. And Adam was like, God, she's not obeying me. And she said, bitch, fuck you. And she routed. And her routing wasn't enough to leave her alone. They like Adam and the sky god it. They sent like fucking people and ghouls and deities after her to try to like intimidate her, kill her. Mind you, she's pregnant at the time. Like it wasn't enough for her to leave and mind her business and just live her life. The fact that she left was like a whole huge thing. And so they were trying to scare her, they were trying to intimidate her because a free woman is the most dangerous thing to the system. A free woman is the most dangerous thing to the patriarchy. So it wasn't enough that she left and wanted to mind her business. They had to scare her into hiding. And then, Inanna, I love the story of Inanna, but Lilith went into this tree, this sacred tree of life, right? That Inanna ended up casting her and the other creatures in there out of to create a throne. So I said, all respect to Inanna. I love Inanna. I love the story of Inanna and her sister and going into the underworld. But to me, Inanna and like the Sumerian myths, they were the root of the patriarchal structure. They were the beginning of the patriarchal mind control. And how funny is it that Lilith isn't only in like the Christian Catholic religious myths with Adam and Eve. Lilith is ancient. Lilith shows up in like across many different times, many different periods, many different mythological structures. And Lilith was the wild woman who lived in a tree, embodying the essence of the tree, embodying the essence of Mother Nature. And Inanna, the first princess slash queen, to then adhere to the patriarchal structure, kicks her out of the tree of Mother Nature, sends her back into the wild. I think she offers her, like, I can kill you or you can go and live in the woods. thinking that like Inanna thought that death would be a better outcome for Lilith than to be wild and free, because all Inanna ever knew was her queendom in the kingdom. So anyway, back to Lilith. She's that shadow side, that repressed side. And Lilith has been playing a similar role in the last couple moon cycles. We talked a bit about her on the other videos, but with this quincunx aspect, again, quincunx being like we're saying a lot without saying anything directly. We're working together, but nobody around me is going to know I'm working with you. Because the only way we're communicating is this. Did you hear that? You heard that, right? Saying a whole lot without saying a word. Saying a whole lot without saying a word to one another. So the sun and the moon, again, our outward expression, our internal understanding. Quincunx Lilith, the side of ourselves we were meant to shame and repress and hide away and pretend doesn't exist, that wild aspect of ourselves, that mother nature within us, indirectly speaking, with our identity both externally and internally. Saying a lot without saying anything at all. And I feel like that's all I have to say about that. Saying a lot without saying anything at all. And I even highlighted it. This is a very significant aspect for this new moon. And I do want to touch on Venus right now because Venus, similar to Psyche, is playing a significant but not so prominent role in terms of the new moon expression. If you go back and watch my Cancer season reading video, I talk about how Venus is telling the entire story. I also made a video on TikTok about Venus's story throughout Cancer season as we lead up to the cradle on the 19th. Radius of Aurora, if you want to go check that out on there. If not, we'll just talk about Venus really quickly on here. So Venus is going to be at 5 degrees and 11 minutes in Virgo, directly opposing the asteroid Hecate, which is at 5 degrees and 8 minutes. No, 8 minutes? Yeah, 5 degrees and 8 minutes in Pisces, conjoining the North Node, which is at 0 degrees. Um, and this aspect with Venus and Hecate, while Persephone is making that quintile aspect to the sun and the moon, it's akin to the myth. Because when Persephone was taken by Hades in the underworld, Demeter could not find her anywhere, and she searched. She searched. You know what I'm saying? She searched for so long that once she couldn't find her daughter and she was distraught. She said, "Well, if nobody's gonna help me look for her, if nobody's gonna tell me where she is, because Zeus knew." She said, "If nobody's gonna help me find my daughter, I'm gonna starve this fucking place. The whole world's gonna starve. I'm the goddess of the harvest. There will be no harvest as long as I don't have my daughter." She's searching high and low everywhere for her. Nobody knew where she was. But Hecate was the only person that eventually heard her screams, Persephone's screams, from the underworld. Hecate was the only person that heard her screams. And she went to Demeter and she said, "Hey, I think I know where your daughter is. You're not going to like it." She's the only person that not only heard the screams, but was willing to help Demeter bring justice back to Persephone. And again, it ended up being a compromise for all parties because Persephone was tricked into eating the pomegranate seed, so she could only be in the above ground for half the season, making her the goddess of springtime in that aspect. But she also is now the ruler of the underworld, has more power than she did before, for better or for worse. But anyway, that's kind of the dynamic we have here, especially going back to that subtle energy of Psyche, that subtle energy that we're moving with this entire new moon. It's that idea that Hecate is the only one who was able to hear Persephone. Hecate was the only one that was able to actually help and bring her back to the above, like to the surface world, opposing Venus. In oppositions, some people claim that they're tough aspects. Oppositions and conjunctions alike can be neutral, but the same way that squares are tense because they want to go in different directions, but they're both being forced again, almost to compromise in order to bring that energy down to ground it into earth. Oppositions, they feel tense and they feel tough, but it could also be both sides of the spectrum working together to find harmony between one another. Through the tension, they're able to find a compromise. And with Venus, which is also Aphrodite, as we mentioned before, Venus opposing Hecate, Venus again being the quote, for lack of a better term, I need to find a better way to explain this, but the light feminine, the more acceptable side of the feminine, even though people like to forget she's also the goddess of war. The acceptable, more outward facing side of the feminine, the sensuality, the beauty, the aesthetics, all of that. Venus is opposing another one of the dark mothers, another dark goddess, the goddess of witches, the goddess of the new moon. And for the last like 6 months, under almost every new moon we talked about, Hecate was making some sort of prominent yet subtle aspect here. And this is it here. And Hecate is the mother of witches who is best petitioned under the dark moon. She's the dark moon goddess. She's the triple dark moon goddess. Opposing Venus, while Venus is telling her story throughout Cancer season. While Venus and Hecate are both, so Hecate is, yeah, they're both squaring Uranus and Gemini. Uranus being unexpected, unpredictable changes, Gemini being androgynous. So two goddesses representing two sides of the more, quote, feminine expression, the goddess expression, making a tense, grounding square aspect to Uranus, which grounds things to Earth, just 5 days before Jupiter swoops into that 4-degree mark where it will make that exact cradle. And the cradle energy, it's still relevant here because Pluto and Neptune and Uranus are all at 4 degrees. Jupiter is at 3 degrees on the day of the new moon. But that's still prominent. It's just that the cradle aspect hits its peak once Jupiter moves into that 4-degree aspect. But all of that's happening while Venus is opposing Hecate. I don't even know if I talked about this in the Cancer moon reading, because this is part of Venus's story. Because she started Cancer season opposing Juno. She then went to trine Vesta and Pallas, exactly. And then she made a square to Persephone. Oh, trining Eris first, then a square to Persephone. No, not yet. She didn't hit Persephone yet. She's actually going to trine okay. Opposing Juno first. And then she had that trine with Pallas and Vesta. And then she had the trine with Eris. Now she's opposing Hecate. And then in just a couple of days, I need to see where it's going to be during the cradle. But in just around the same time as it might be on the cradle. I think it's on the cradle. She'll trine Persephone. Venus, the most outward, acceptable expression of the divine feminine aspect within us, within all of us. I'm not trying to get into that weird, like, bioessential shit, right? It's in all of us. Men, women, themin, Yemen. Anyway, it's in all of us, right? That divine feminine aspect. It's in all of us. Oh my god, and then after Persephone, she's going to square Ceres, Persephone's mom. Venus is telling the story where she's making these exact aspects, both harmonious and tense and grounded, with almost every fucking goddess in the sky, while the cradle is going to be at its peak. This is kind of fucking crazy, dude. This is fucking crazy. So Venus and Hecate, part of the story of this squaring Uranus, is helping to ground. It's helping to find balance between the acceptable divine feminine aspect of Venus and the dark moon goddess aspect of Hecate. Unexpectedly, in ways that we are not able to predict, with Uranus and Gemini, unexpectedly grounding that. And with Gemini being androgynous, grounding that in a way that takes the stigma away from like what is deemed feminine, what is deemed the acceptable expression of feminine, in ways that we cannot predict, unexpected ways. All while all this other energy is in Cancer, Mercury, Sun, Moon, Psyche, while the North Node at 0 degrees and Hecate are in Pisces. So there's a lot of like deep death, oceanic water, collective, unconscious energy there. This is a shift, bitch, dude, man. Oh my God. This is a shift. Leading up to the cradle. This is a shift. And I wrote down it's significant to mention that every single aspect that Venus is making in this chart, except for one, every other planet and asteroid are retrograde. Hecate is retrograde. Neptune is retrograde. Pluto is retrograde. She quincunxes Neptune and Pluto. Again, that's saying a lot without saying anything. Quincunxing Neptune and Pluto, opposing Hecate, the only aspect she's making, or the only planet that she's making an aspect to that isn't retrograde, is Uranus. So the grounding of this moves us forward. This is saying a lot without saying anything. So Mars is quincunx Pallas. We already talked about that. Technically, Mars is also conjoining Uranus. It's within a 10-degree orb because Uranus is at 4 degrees and 20 minutes. That's directly on top of my ascendant. It's funny. Uranus is going to be on top of my ascendant. Psyche is going to be on top of my natal psyche. The sun and the moon are going to be conjunct my sun. Mercury's going to be conjunct my moon. Mars is going to be on my Venus. This is kind of crazy. Pluto's on my Uranus. Pallas is on my Jupiter. Me personally, I'm being lit the fuck up. And it's the day before my birthday, this new moon. It's the day before my fucking birthday. Sheesh. So yeah, Mars, again, our planet of action. Mars, our planet of action, which is making that direct quincunx with Pallas that we talked about earlier, is technically conjoining Uranus within that 10-degree orb. While Uranus is also biquintile Pallas in Capricorn. And again, Pallas is small decisions that alter the trajectory of our life moving forward. Pallas is in conjunct Mars. So it's the planet of action, not being able to see or directly speak to that asteroid which talks about those little decisions altering the trajectory of our lives. Mars is conjoining Uranus. Or I guess it would be here. Mars is conjoining Uranus. Mars is the planet of action, of forward movement, of discipline in its own right, of strategy in its own right, of commitment to our goals because it's about the willpower and the drive that we need to get to our goals and reach our goals. Also, war. Feels like it's important to mention. Mars, which is making that inconjunct, that quincunx to Pallas, is also conjoining Uranus, which is making the squares and grounding this new ideal of the quote feminine, making the square to Venus and Hecate, while at the same time making a biquintile aspect to Pallas. And again, quintiles help us understand and recognize the innate gifts we have within us. So we can bring our conscious awareness to those gifts in order to bring them to reality, not only to help ourselves, not only so we can make small decisions that align us to the path of our destiny moving forward, but so we can utilize those gifts to help bring balance to the collective. Uranus is unexpected. Uranus is changes that happen that you are unable to predict. Gemini is the youngest the youngest trickster in the zodiac, which is already unexpected. Think about Loki, think about Hermes. I want to take it Egyptian, Thoth. He invented almost everything in terms of Egyptian mythology. Ruler of Gemini. This is a reset. All the while, we have Chiron at 0 degrees Taurus. Taurus is considered the first feminine sign of the zodiac. First sign ruled by Venus connects us deeply to our sensuality, to our bodies, to our desire for rest, to that idea that life is meant to be easy, to our worth, to our worthiness, to our passions. 0 degrees is a critical degree. In numerology, 0 is an amplifier. Chiron is our deepest wounds and also our efforts to heal them. Chiron being at 0 degrees Taurus, again, the first feminine sign of the zodiac. While Venus and Hecate are squaring Uranus, while Venus has already been telling her story all throughout Cancer season, just days before this cradle, where Jupiter, Zeus, is going to oppose Pluto, Hades, which will directly conjoin Juno, who is Zeus's, Jupiter's, wife. While they both sextile Uranus, who's Saturn's father, primordial energy, primordial unexpected deity, and Neptune, also considered a trickster, because it's about illusions and being disillusioned by the illusions and false flags, false facades. I guess false facade is redundant, but you know what I mean. It's about finding your way through the smoke and mirrors to the truth. And then again, while Saturn's not involved in that cradle or that energy, but his daddy is, shout out Uranus. While Saturn's not involved in that energy, Saturn is also making a quintile aspect to Pluto. Saturn is our discipline. It's foregoing. That was a honk. Did you hear that? Confirmation. It's foregoing short-term gratification because you know if you don't focus on the short-term gratification and you keep your eyes set to where you're going long-term, that path we keep talking about, that vision we keep talking about over and over and over again, you're not giving into the laziness just because you want to be lazy that day. If you allow Saturn to guide you out of the laziness to the gym, to go on that drive, to do your work, allow Saturn to be the disciplinary action you need, the father, if you will, that you need to tell you, hey, you need to get your fucking ass up and go mow the lawn. You need to get your ass up and do something. Saturn's making that quintile aspect, again, awakening innate gifts within us, to Pluto. Death and destruction in order to usher in rebirth. It's transformation, it's transformative energy. Allowing Saturn as the disciplinary figure to force you to do the work you need to do in order to awaken gifts that will help you usher in the death of the old and transform you into the person you need to be to not only move towards the new, but to become the new. I forgot to mention that too, and this is the last thing I'll mention. Perfect timing. This is the last thing I'll mention. And you know what? I will explain first. Every single planetary rulership in this chart comes back to that moon in Cancer. It comes right back to that new moon in Cancer because remember, we have Mercury, the sun, and the moon all conjoining each other in Cancer. So, Jupiter is ruled by the sun. Jupiter is in Leo. The sun rules Leo, which means Jupiter is ruled by the sun in Cancer, which is ruled by the moon in Cancer. Venus is in Virgo, ruled by Mercury, which is in Cancer, ruled by the moon, which is in Cancer. Mars is in Gemini, ruled by Mercury, which is ruled by the moon in Cancer. Uranus also. We have all of that Aries energy, Saturn, Neptune, and then even the asteroids we've talked about, ruled by Mars, which is in Gemini, which is ruled by Mercury, which is in Cancer, ruled by the moon. We have Chiron and Taurus. Venus rules Taurus. Venus is in Virgo, which is ruled by Mercury, which is in Cancer, ruled by the moon. We have Pluto in Aquarius, which is ruled by Saturn, which is in Aries, which is ruled by Mars, which is in Gemini, which is ruled by Mercury, which is in Cancer, which is ruled by the moon. Every fucking aspect of this chart comes back to that moon in Cancer. Comes back to the new moon in Cancer. Every fucking aspect of that chart comes back to the new moon in Cancer. Every fucking aspect of that chart. So again, there's this very loud subtlety. It's a really fucking loud subtlety. And this is the first new moon after Jupiter left its exaltation in Cancer. But it's interesting that Jupiter is still indirectly ruled by that moon in Cancer for this moon cycle. So there's still the amplification there. There's still the amplification there. And Jupiter is still technically conjoining Psyche at 29 degrees Cancer. And again, I'm going to read you exactly what I wrote off here. Psyche is representative of our soul within our birth chart and all of the immense trials and tribulations our souls go through in order to discover its own indomitable spirit and strength. This is especially true because of the closed Cancer rulership of the Sun, Moon, Mercury, and Venus, pretty much every other planet indirectly. With Psyche at that 29-degree mark of Cancer, while the moon in Cancer, or I think I meant to say the moon and the sun in Cancer are directly or indirectly ruling over every aspect of this chart. Again, there's a subtle yet prominent energy of recognizing the true strength you have not only to move with the tides, but to become the tides themselves. To recognize the patterns of motion and movement and plan accordingly based on the patterns of movement, but also leaving space for the unpredictable with that Uranus energy involved there. All of this is simply emphasized by the conjunction with Jupiter in Leo at 3 degrees and 13 minutes. And to note, the sun moves out of Cancer on the 22nd at 3:13 p.m. to move into, you guessed it, Leo. The sun moving into its domicile, where Jupiter is currently residing, at 3:13 p.m. On the Cancer new moon, Jupiter will be at 3 degrees and 13 minutes in Leo, ruled by the sun. Going back to the pattern recognition and learning how to anticipate, how to move, and how astrology is a tool that can help you become aware so you're not unprepared. And I love numerology. I don't know exactly what this means about the 313. 13 is the death card in the tarot. 13 is transformation. 13 in itself is kind of the Plutonian energy of the tarot because it's death and rebirth. 3 is creation. 3 is the Empress. So 313, it's quite literally the Empress, the aspect of creation. Creation and destruction. What the fuck did we talk about earlier? This new moon, this is a reset. It's not even a turning point because we've already turned the corner. We've already been walking around that way for quite some time now. Not long, but pretty much since the Capricorn full moon. We made the choice and we said, okay, this is the choice. I'm going this way. And I love that Hecate is the goddess of the crossroads. We made the choice. We're already walking that way. And we're saying, for better or for worse, this is the way I chose. This is the way I gotta go. Knowing with Psyche's involvement here that any obstacle that comes up, it's not to stop you, it's to fucking fortify you. If you don't know the full story of Psyche, look it up. Look what Aphrodite put that girl through. She expected every single task she gave her to be impossible. And every time Psyche came walking back, here you go, that one's done. Can I go see your son now? No, you gotta do this one now. Another seemingly impossible feat. Psyche gets help from unexpected places. Not from the deities. The deities didn't want anything to do with it because they didn't want to get on Aphrodite's bad side. From the most unexpected of places. Help arrived just when she needed it. She still did the work she needed to do. It's not like she was just kicking her feet up and waiting for somebody to come help her. She went forth, headstrong, ready to take it on her own. Oh, I have chills. And because she was ready to take that feat on her own, help was ushered in unexpected, unpredictable ways. And finally, Psyche said, go to the underworld. And then snickered because she's like, she's gonna die. You can never come back from the underworld. You can't even go to the underworld unless you die. Unless you know a guy. Unless you know a guy or a woman. Feminism. And she ended up getting everything she wanted and more. And fortified her spirit along the way. Was able to show herself just how fucking strong she is. Just how much she's fucking capable of. And just how mystical and magical this world actually is. As I said that, a crow flew across my front yard directly in front of my front door. The Morrigan has entered the chat. Babes, this is a turning point. This is a turning point. And nothing was the same. I think I gotta leave it there. Again, I post more up to date, more frequent astrological transit updates, as well as, other random spiritual happenings that come into my brain that I want to share. That's all on my TikTok. If you want more frequent hiccups, you want more frequent up to date updates, follow me on there. Of course, we will have our our new moon and our full moon readings, our sun seasons, zodiacal readings on here. That's not going to change. But yeah, if you want more up to date, more random stuff, follow me on TikTok. I also post like poetry and writing and photography on Substack. TikTok, YouTube, Substack, all under the same name, Radius Aurora. If you want to come and find me there, I would love to have you there. If not, I'm still just going to post my apps anyway. So, Schrodinger's apps. They'll be there or they won't be there. It'll all depend if you are. Uh, anyway, like I said, this is the day before my birthday. This is happening. So, yeehaw. I'm excited. See where this falls in your chart. See where all of these are falling in your chart with your personal planets because there's a lot of energy. There's a lot of energy moving here. And especially, I'm going to emphasize before we go, especially that Mars Pholus quincunx aspect. See where Mars, 11 degrees Gemini and 11 degrees Capricorn. See where those are in your chart. See if there you have any other 11-degree placements because that is going to be like everything's subtle but heavy in this fucking reading. But it's going to be it'll help you see where the potential like laziness, the odds of laziness might arise. It could be physically, it could be mentally, it could be, in your relationship. It'll help you get a better understanding of the ways that trickster energy will try to get you to not do what you know you need to do. So, other than that, I gotta end this. Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker. Walkie talkie die hard, motherfucker. All right, that's it. Love y'all. Bye.